I will not, in good conscience, send young men and women off to die on foreign battlefields.
For a man that swears he's not running for political office, he sure is positioning himself to run for political office. That was Joe Kent speaking out against the Iran war and why he resigned during a prayer breakfast in Washington. And while his position may sound principled to the ignorant masses, it's actually paralyzing. You see, he starts the speech by comparing this current situation with that of Iraq, where we all know that America and the world was lied to go invade Iraq, and he swore up and down that he would never allow that to happen if he ever was in a position to do so. And so while experience matters, it can also be a prison. Because if your worldview is still dominated by the traumas of Iraq and the excesses of regime change, then you are not reading the present day situation clearly. You are letting the past veto the future. Statesmanship requires more than reacting to what has already happened. It requires being able to see where the world is going and acting before things become catastrophic. You do not wait for a threat to be fully formed, fully armed, and fully emboldened before you take it seriously. By then, your choices are worse, your leverage is lower, and the cost in blood is exponentially higher. The tragedy of his argument and those that share it is that it wears the mask of restraint while in reality it invites greater war later. It's very Neville Chamberlain. And it confuses hesitation with wisdom and trauma with strategy. And it confuses a very understandable disgust of the war on terror with a very viable doctrine. In a world shaped by nuclear thresholds, proxy warfare, collapsing deterrence, and Chinese ambition, something he never even mentions. Which should be alarm bells for anyone talking about this current Iran war without mentioning China is extremely disingenuous or very willfully ignorant. We are now in the midst of a second Cold War, something that my followers know I've been talking about for years, and it only now crosses the lips of famed geopolitical experts, for example, Neil Ferguson. It's time people start using it every day because no longer do we live in a Cold War between the United States and USSR or Russia, but rather a Cold War between the United States or the Western world and China. And the only way that we can maintain some semblance of stability in this new Cold War is by not pretending that the threat doesn't exist until it's undeniable. If this stability has a chance to be maintained in the long term, we must recognize that some threats have to be stopped before they become irreversible. And that is the burden of leadership, to act before disaster earns unanimous consent, of which he clearly didn't give his. If he isn't capable of doing that, then his so-called restraint, wrapped in wisdom, is merely just trauma masquerading as moral clarity. And that type of mentality will not prevent the next great war, it will ensure its inevitability.